In Memphis, Tennessee, mother of two, Liza Fletcher, was abducted and murdered while going for an early morning run. Outrage tonight as more information is revealed about the accused killer and his alleged prior attacks. Could this murder have been prevented if law enforcement had processed DNA from a year-old case? We take a closer look.
He should not have been on the street. Our office actually opposed parole.
In Pike County, Ohio, the Pike County massacre, 8 members of the Roden family murdered on 4 different locations in one night. Finally, the trial of one of the defendants begins. We have a live report and the latest from inside the courtroom.
This was not in a fit of rage. This was not in self-defense. These murders happened after a period of 3 months.
And on the docket tonight, Alex Jones, the outspoken founder of the popular Infowars program, back in court for statements he made about the Sandy Hook shootings being staged. Will a second jury hold him liable and award damages to the Sandy Hook families?
I can't even describe the last 9.5 years of the living hell that I and others have had to endure because of the negligence and the recklessness of Alex Jones.
Plus, a Texas teacher is fired after 18 seconds of her speaking in class is posted on TikTok, where she is heard telling a student, "We will not judge people just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old. The teacher says it was taken out of context. Tonight's 13th juror question: is this 18-second recording enough to have the teacher fired? Get ready. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us here on Closing Arguments. Big hour coming up on this Monday, and I want to start here. Let's talk about law enforcement. When I think about the purpose of law enforcement as a former prosecutor, it's great what they do. A crime happens, they investigate, they track down the bad guy or bad woman, and they arrest them, and then I would prosecute them. That's great, right? You're reacting and you're getting justice for the victim, etc. There's another purpose I believe that law enforcement has, and that is to prevent crimes from happening in the first place, reducing the number of victims, making our community safer. Now, there's a couple of ways they can do that. You know, one way is patrols and out there deterring people. Another way is keeping really bad people off the streets, right? And sometimes it's our system that lets them out, like judges and parole boards. And other times, there's other reasons. And I'm going to talk about one of those other reasons tonight, and it may make you angry. And I don't know the why it happened this way, but it did, and it shouldn't, and it needs to change. Okay? So let's start. Cleotha Henderson. You remember this guy in court? Take a look at him. Convicted felon, career criminal, worst of the worst, kidnapped, abducted, is accused of kidnapping and abducting Liza Fletcher, the jogger from Memphis, the mom, the kindergarten teacher. Also an heiress to a billionaire, but that was such a small part of who she was. So he's been charged with her murder. I'm going to go through a timeline right now relative to Henderson, the accused killer. And I'm going to try to control myself as I go through this. I may not be able to. Let's begin. May of 2000, he's sentenced to 20 years in prison for the abduction and robbery of an attorney. Okay, that's bad. He's sentenced to 20 years in prison. In 2020, he's released from prison. He's on parole. Okay. It happens, right? He was very young. He was 16 when he committed the crime. So I guess our system realized he's got to get out at some point for an abduction and robbery, right? It's not going to be a life without parole situation. Now, this next date, pay close attention to this next date, September 21st, 2021. Okay, that's about a year ago. Memphis police take a victim's report for what? An abduction and sexual assault incident. A sexual assault kit is submitted 2 days later to the TBI. Okay, look at the date again, September 21st, 2021. All right, so now we know that there's a dangerous person out there who was abducted and sexually assaulted a member of the community. Okay? And there's evidence, the best evidence, right? The DNA evidence. Flash forward on the timeline. June 24th, 2022. This sexual assault kit from that crime we just spoke about is pulled to be analyzed. The crime happened in September of 2021, and we don't know who this dangerous person is, and we're waiting till June to analyze it? Now, I don't know if it's a budgetary thing, staff, COVID. You're going to give me the COVID? You want to throw COVID out there too, right? There's no excuse that makes sense. This is someone who's abducting and sexually assaulting people. And we've got evidence of who it is. And it could be someone, whose DNA is in the system because they're a convicted felon. But we wait till June to analyze it of the following year? August 29th, 2022. Forensic scientist completes the report and enters the results into the CODIS system. September 2nd, Henderson abducts and murders Liza Fletcher, according to prosecutors. September 5th, the TBI gets DNA results back from the 2021 kidnapping and rape case, and it's a match for Henderson. Do you realize if they just tested it, 3 months after the crime, he would have been locked up. 4 months after the crime, 5 months after the crime, 6 months after the crime, 7 months after the crime. Why did it take almost literally a year to take DNA evidence and analyze it and compare it to the dangerous convicted felons in our system who, I don't know, maybe are out on bail, out on parole, maybe served their time? Makes no sense to me. Makes zero sense to me. What we do know is that this is sort of the norm if the police don't ask for it to be expedited. If it's expedited, they could do it in 5 days. In the case of Liza's case, I think they did it in like 18 hours. They analyzed the DNA. So unless there's a million news crews there, we don't care. We don't want to catch these people and prevent a crime which saves a life. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I need help. Let's bring the think tank. Join us tonight in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, Wunsch III. In Stamford, Connecticut, criminal defense attorney, Darnell, Crosland. And in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, family law attorney, Jennifer Brandt. Al, I'm going to rely on all of you to try to explain why this is. And maybe, and it's a budgetary thing? Is that it? We don't have enough people analyzing the DNA, so when someone gets abducted and raped, we don't want to investigate it for a year?
Well, Vinny, it is a staffing issue. That's part of it. It is budgetary. And like you said, they have to look at
let's move some of that money around, Al. Can't we move the money around a little bit? Isn't this kind of important?
Now, how do we classify what's important? Do we say that murder is more important than rape, Or is rape more important than murder?
No, I think
how do
they're
you
both at the top of
prioritize-
the list. I think they're both at the top of the list. Someone who's abducting and raping people is very capable of murdering someone.
Well, okay.
Top of the
that's
list.
Understandable. But it's not, you have to take a look at resources, and resources are scarce. And what you have to do is you have to work within your budgetary means. And it's an unfortunate situation, but these guys aren't Kreskin. They can't tell the future. I mean, I think that anyone there in the Tennessee Police Department, in the state of Tennessee, is saying, I can't believe we didn't do this. But you have to prioritize your crimes. And murders are usually the top ones that go on there. Rape is probably right below that. But I mean, I got to imagine in a state like Tennessee, there's a lot of murders. In fact, as I know, they are, because we've covered so many murder cases out of Tennessee. So,
Darnell,
it's not.
Al, I gotta stop you there. I got it. I got it. You think it's all about money. I think it's insanity. Darnell, is not a. Do we think? Let's just use a little common sense here. Do we think that someone who abducts and rapes someone and gets away with it might do it again?
Absolutely, and that's why this gentleman's DNA had to be in the system, because when you get convicted of something like this, you're in the system. You're in Tennessee. So when they get a hit on some DNA, the first thing you want to do is to analyze it against the known dangerous individuals that has already come before the court. And so, like you said in the opener, you can't stay in jail forever. So maybe they said the guy was young, they let him out, okay, fine. But they have to prioritize. Let him out or put him in this box. If something comes up that even remotely sounds like it could be connected, check it out right away and compare it, because that is a possibility. But don't sit back and say you can't afford to do that, because someone is dead now. And now what does that cost?
Jennifer Brandt, and I understand, and I'm with what Al's saying about the budget and prioritizing, but how is not someone who would abduct and rape a member of the community not like the top priority? To me, that person obviously could kill someone. To me, it's obvious. If you're going to abduct and rape someone, you don't think that person is capable of abducting, raping, and killing someone? And I'm not doing Monday morning quarterback here, using some common sense. How's that not the top priority? Whether you want to rush it in 5 days, how about just 5 months instead of 5 days?
Yeah, well, Vinny, I disagree with Al, because no matter what the budget constraints, this should take priority. I mean, they had the DNA. It's not a question of not having the evidence. They had the DNA. It's just a matter of analyzing it. And once they analyzed it, like Darnell said, this guy is already in the system, so they would have had a hit on him right away. And clearly, they could have prevented this murder. So, and gotten him off the street, because he's just a bad guy. So no, Al, you're wrong on this one. Budget,
I'm not
no
wrong.
budget.
I mean, how did they know?
This is something that they should do right away.
How did they know this DNA was in the system?
But they test it, and then they say, all right, this is an easy one. It's in the system. Maybe if it wasn't in the system, okay, then it takes some time to try to find who it might be. But they could have found out right away that this was the guy who did this crime, who abducted and raped somebody, had kidnapped somebody previously, and should be back in jail. He should have never been let out. And they let him out, 20 years in prison. But now it's time for him to go back before he goes and commits more crimes. So having the evidence, testing it, doesn't seem like a huge deal. Seems like they're able to do it when they have to. And why shouldn't it be a priority? It should be something that they do right away and see if there happens to be a match. Oh boy, we got the guy. Let's bring him back in. I think it's a no-brainer.
Now, let me put up on the screen his new charges, I guess for the 2021 case: aggravated rape, especially aggravating kidnapping, unlawful carrying of a weapon by a felon. Now, I want you to listen, Al, to Steve Mulroy, who is the Shelby County District Attorney. Let's just listen to what he has to say, and then we'll react to it.
Any kind of violence, of course, is unacceptable, but repeat violent offenders particularly deserve a strong response, and that's what they'll get from this district attorney's office. We will continue to cooperate with law enforcement and work closely with them, as we already have, so that we can do our best to bring justice to this tragic situation.
Here's the problem, Al. If we were talking about repeat offenders, right, it would be one thing. We're talking about a three-peat offender now, right? Because there's the 2021 case and now the case with Liza. If they had just been harsh and vigilant and sentenced him as a repeat offender, there wouldn't have been a three-peat offense committed here. That's the problem that I have with what's going on here. I just think someone's got to go in there and shake things up and say, listen, anytime we've got someone who is abducting and raping someone, we're going to analyze the DNA within a month. Okay, I'll give them a month. Expedited, doesn't have to be super expedited, 5 days, 18 hours. How about in a month, Al? Is that reasonable?
I don't have a problem if it's done in a month. I don't have a problem if it's done in 4 days. I mean, I would love it to be done in 72 hours. I think that would be splendid. Unfortunately, there's a thing called economics that come into play. There's a number of other issues that come into play with regards to these labs. These labs are overworked to begin with, okay? And you don't want them screwing up on something as important as this. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have tested it, but how did they know that the second crime that he committed would then lead to the third? They didn't, okay? They didn't know that. They didn't test the DNA at that time. Okay, they either had him or they didn't know it was him. So how are they supposed to automatically figure, let's put this to the front of the thing because he's going to do something again? We don't know that. This isn't a Tom Cruise movie.
It's a violent crime, Al. But it's a violent crime, Al. And the fact that I agree with Vinnie, there's someone out there abducting and raping people. I mean, you think like maybe we should test that. Maybe that's something we should be looking at. Maybe we don't want these kind of people on the street. This was not something like, oh, well, we'll just let them go on and on. I mean, who knows who we might be? So don't you think that has importance?
Start a list. Give me the list of the priorities.
Point out, we can't jump to a budgetary concern, because we all do this. You did this as a prosecutor. This is real life stuff here. Lawrence Smith Fields, the case that you covered on this show. Guy says, hey, I never had sex with this young girl. The police don't even test DNA, and then they find a condom with semen in the bathroom, and now this guy's still on the loose. No DNA test. Up to today, the lab has still not come back and given us anything conclusive, and we're filing a lawsuit because of that. Why should we have to file lawsuits for them to do their job? Now, this guy could be out there doing the same thing to someone else. And what's happening here? So it's not just about money. It's something wrong, and we just need to fix it.
Yeah, I just think it's a priority situation. And what I mean is rape and abduction, top of the list. Top of the list, top priority. No questions asked. I mean, I don't care how far that backlog is. Rape and abduction, move it up to the front. Anyhow, it's tragic, and our system failed. It absolutely failed, because we have the technology and the ability. What we need are politicians giving the money and everyone else figuring out how to get it done. No more excuses. When we come back, we're going to talk about the new trial here on Court TV, day one, Pike County massacre, opening statements today. We've got a live report. Joy Lynn Nakrin is there in Ohio. 2 members of his own family scheduled to testify against him. Brutal, brutal case. 8 members of the Roden family executed. That's next.
This was not a crime of passion. This was not in a fit of rage. This was not in self-defense. These murders happened after a period of 3 months of planning and plotting and purchasing and preparing and executing 8 individuals of a family.
There's no physical evidence George was at any of those murder scenes. There's no DNA, there's no prints, and BCI knew he had no motive. They knew that he was not involved in drugs. And you know, they knew they had only spoke with him one time, and that was for a reason. They have nothing on George.
The Pike County massacre, long anticipated trial finally began today. This is the first trial against George Wagner IV. Take a look at him in court today. 4 members of his family have been charged, but 2 of them have taken deals and will likely testify against him. His brother and his mother. His brother's plea deal, strange one. If this brother testifies truthfully against him, then he derives a benefit. If he's convicted, he will not be eligible for the death penalty. Neither will his brother. Anyhow, let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Joy Lynn Akron, who joins us live from Pike County, Ohio tonight. Joy, great to see you. Let's start with prosecutors. What they have to say in their opening statement today.
Yeah, well, a very detailed opening statement delivered by Angela Conneticut. She started early in the morning, about 9:30, and she continued through the afternoon session. She argued that the Wagner family had a very elaborate plan to kill members of the Roden family, specifically Hannah Mae Roden, and that it all centered around the dispute that Hannah Mae Roden was having with Jake Wagner about the child that they shared together and who should get custody of that child. Conneticut also argued that the Wagners ultimately voted that the only way they would regain custody and control of Sophie Wagner is by eliminating Hannah Mae Roden and certain members of her family, and so they did. Let's listen.
We show Jake, at least his awards card being used to buy 7.62 ammo and a magazine for an SKS. Also in April, there was a phone jammer purchased by Angela. A phone jammer jams signals for phones. So say you're gonna go murder 8 people and you don't want them to be able to call for help, then you have a phone jammer on your person and it jams the signals. It's actually illegal because it can interfere with aircraft and such. So, but that was purchased, and a bug detector was purchased by Angela. There were the financial records also just confirm what we already knew, which was this is a very, they function as one unit in pretty much everything they do. Financially is no exception.
Yeah, so you hear bits of that narrative that they function as a unit that was all for one and one for all, and that they conspired to carry out this massacre for months before actually killing the family of the Rodens.
Okay, Joy, what did the defense have to say about George Wagner IV today?
Yeah, so really the defense tried to flip that on its head. They argued that George Wagner is an individual. He just happens to be a member of the Wagner family. They didn't try to deny that the Wagner family was responsible for the deaths of the Rodens, but they said just because certain members of the family were responsible doesn't mean that George was responsible. In fact, that he wasn't, that there wasn't sufficient evidence to even show that he was there the night in question. And again, they reminded the jurors something that we've already covered in our report, that Jake Wagner himself said that George did not shoot anyone, did not pull the trigger, let alone the night in question. Let's listen.
When we were brought into this world, we couldn't help who our parents were or are. And just like George cannot help that he was born into the Wagner family. The state wants to paint this with a broad paintbrush about the Wagners. Unfortunately, George cannot help that he's a Wagner, but that doesn't make him a murderer. Jake will tell you that George had nothing to do with the planning of these murders. Jake will tell you that George shot no one. Jake will tell you that George did nothing to destroy any evidence.
And as you mentioned, Vinnie, Jake Wagner himself is expected to testify.
Now, let's talk about what's taking place inside the courtroom? Anything you noticed either from the defendant or something in the gallery? We know this is a case that has impacted that community so greatly. What did you see?
Yeah, well, I didn't see anybody on the defense side except media, fellow media. The victim side, prosecution side, was really packed with friends and family of the Rodins. The matriarch of the Rodin family, the grandmother of Hannah Mae Rodin, appeared very emotional during opening statements. Whereas George Wagner, I saw the emotions kind of fluctuating. He appeared stoic, but also very nervous and fidgety. I could see him kind of twiddling his thumbs. And then there was a moment when our cameras actually caught him nodding off. You know, so hard for me to understand kind of that fluctuation in emotions from extremely nervous to extremely tired, but I guess it might be exhausting being that nervous. I understand, you know, perhaps he may not have slept the night before if it's like many criminal defendants the eve of the start of their trial. But certainly the jury seemed very attentive, even through the very lengthy opening statement by the prosecution.
Joy Lim Nakrin, live in Pike County, Ohio. Trial continuing there. Thank you so much. Appreciate your excellent reporting as always. When we come back, folks, we're going to take you on the docket. Another day, another civil trial for Infowars founder Alex Jones. We'll talk about what's happening in this case involving the Sandy Hook victims and their families. And we'll bring back in our think tank. Don't go away.
I wanted to tell you to your face because I wanted you to know that I am a mother first and foremost, and I know that you're a father, and my son existed. You're still on your show today trying to say that I'm implying that I'm an actress, that I'm deep state. You have this week, and I don't understand. Truth is so vital to our world. Truth is what we base our reality on. And we have to agree on that to have a civil society. Sandy Hook is a hard truth, hard truth. Nobody would want to ever believe that 26 kids could be murdered. Nobody would ever want to believe that. I understand people not wanting to believe that, actually. I don't want to believe it.
That's Scarlett Lewis. She lost her son in the Sandy Hook shooting, testifying there against Alex Jones. Alex Jones from the Infowars program, website, podcast, whatever you want to call it. Big lawsuit. Well, there's going to be another one and more testimony and more allegations. And Ted Rowland's Court TV anchor has the latest for us in the latest trial against Alex Jones.
I'm telling you, I will never give up. But if you don't back us, and if you don't get how serious this is, you're next.
Far-right conspiracy theorist and host of Infowars, Alex Jones, is facing off in a Connecticut courtroom against the families of 6 victims of the Sandy Hook massacre.
Now, a lot of the tens of millions of video views on YouTube concerning the Sandy Hook.
For years, Jones has used his radio and internet platforms to claim the mass murder was a hoax and that the grieving family members were crisis actors. Now in a civil case against Jones, the Sandy Hook families allege it was, quote, a marketing scheme that has brought him and his business tens of millions of dollars a year. And as a result, the families and survivors of the Sandy Hook shooting have been forced to endure malicious and cruel abuse at the hands of ruthless and unscrupulous people.
I can't even describe the last 9.5 years of the living hell that I and others have had to endure because of the negligence and the recklessness of Alex Jones.
My son existed. You're still on your show today trying to say that I'm implying that I'm an actress, that I'm deep state. You have this week. And I don't understand. truth is so vital to our world.
Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis are the parents of 6-year-old Jesse, one of the 20 children shot to death at the Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012.
Is this your verdict, the 10 of you who signed it? So say each and all of you, all 10 of you.
Yes. A Texas jury recently awarded them $49 million in damages for the harm Jones's claims have wreaked on their lives. A Conneticut jury will also decide how much in damages to award those families. A judge has already found Jones liable. Questions are being raised about how much of the judgment they and other Sandy Hook families will actually be able to collect. Jones's parent company, Free Speech Systems, filed for bankruptcy midway through the Texas trial.
We declared bankruptcy to put our cards on the table and show there's not all this money.
But in a separate filing, Sandy Hook families allege Jones is hiding his assets to avoid paying damages, even as he agrees he was wrong about Sandy Hook.
I think Sandy Hook happened. And I think it's a terrible event, and I think we need to protect our children.
Despite legal troubles that could hound Jones for years, he remains defiant and is vowing to fight on.
Yes, we're going to continue on if we get your support.
All right, let's bring back in our think tank. Al Wunsch, Darnell, Crosland, Jennifer Brandt with us. Alex Jones. What is this case about? Darnell, it's in your backyard up in Connecticut. Is it about the First Amendment? Is it about defamation, the damages? How do you see this one?
Well, it's a hard case. Sandy Hook, you know, it's been around since 1956. Very, very integral part of the community. And being here in Connecticut, it's one of the #1 sources of pain when it comes to these mass shootings. You know, we've been covering Parkland in Florida, and you know, all the other cases across the country. And Sandy Hook is just one of the first cases, so it continues to resonate with us here in Connecticut. In terms of your question, you have a right to First Amendment, obviously, but you can't incite riots. You can't yell fire in a movie theater. You can't do things that's going to cause people pain. In this particular case, you know, it's for me as a lawyer, it's kind of tough because these people are hurting, and I get it. The question is if, in fact, Mr. Alex Jones here has done something that's going to cause these families damages by being reckless, and I think that's what the jury has to decide. And I think that that's where we're going to find out whether, in fact, the jury can say that your words has caused them more damage and more pain directly. And so again, it's sad. It should never have happened, and these families are hurting, and I just don't know where to draw the line, whether, in fact, you can speak and share your thoughts. There's a bunch of talks about Q and deep state, et cetera, and that goes on every day. Now, how are we going to tie liability to these people and to these shows? I'm not sure.
Jennifer Brandt, I understand punitive damages. You want to punish someone for doing this if a jury wants to do that. But talking about the way these families are damaged by Alex Jones, repeating this hoax that it didn't really happen when they know it happened and they lived through it. So how do you see trying to demonstrate what the damage is?
Well, apparently they've been harassed, they've been attacked, their reputations, people are coming out, his followers are attacking them.
Okay, let's go right there. Let's go right there. So viewers, fans, followers, however you want to term them, people who watched or listened to Alex Jones, they then act out and do something. He is then responsible.
Well, he's inciting them, Vinnie. He's inciting them and getting them going and making these false accusations and sort of getting his followers. You even in the clip there, you see him calling people together. Oh, let's fight this. Let's, call in, give me money, that kind of thing. He's sort of inciting his listeners to go along with what he's saying. And as a result, they're attacking these families. And as a result, these families who have already been through so much pain and so much damage, emotional damage, are now being attacked over and over and over again. The emotional trauma that must cause them is just, immeasurable. So, I mean, I think they will be able to prove damages for sure. That it's just keep on keeping on with him and saying things that are completely untrue. I mean, these people lost their children in the most tragic way, and then to have someone come out there and say that this never happened and that they're actors, I mean, that's pretty horrible. So I think they'll be able to show damages, not punitive damages, but damages to their lives as a result of his actions.
Al, you have 15 seconds. Wrap it up.
He's a thug and a punk. He deserves to be dashed upon the rocks. The same water that's turning frogs gay, they should be throwing him into. Okay? He's an absolute disgrace. These poor people suffered enough, and now they have to defend the fact that their kids were killed in a mass murder. Disgusting. That's not free speech. He should be punished beyond all reproach.
When we come back, time to hear from you, our 13th juror. We're going to get to that in a second. But before we go to that break, we have an update. Big update tonight in the Doomsday Cult Mom saga. The sexual assault charges against Lori Vallow Daybell's oldest son, Colby Ryan, have been dropped, okay? Charges have been dropped. He's 26. He was arrested on September 3rd in Arizona. 2 counts of sexual assault after his estranged wife accused him of raping her in August. According to the probable cause statement, the alleged victim recorded Ryan admitting to the crime, gave the recording to police, and now he's been released from jail, and the charges have been dismissed without prejudice. Key words there. Without prejudice means they can be refiled, but as we stand now, he has no longer facing charges, Colby Ryan. Up next, as I said, you, the 13th juror, weighing in. A teacher in Texas fired after a TikTok recording from inside her classroom where it sounds like she is defending pedophiles. We'll listen to the recording and get your verdict when we return.
A senseless tragedy in small-town America.
This was a pre-planned execution.
It was a feud between families that ended with multiple murders.
Came in like thieves in the night and took 8 lives.
George Wagner faces murder charges in connection with the killing.
Wagner's brother and parents also charged.
It's very much a family affair. All for one, one for all.
It's a chilling story. It will be an intense trial.
The Ohio Family Massacre Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Big story coming tonight out of Texas. 53-year-old Amber Parker, an English teacher at an El Paso high school, has been fired after a video from a student went viral showing her instructing students not to use the word pedophiles, but instead use the term minor attracted persons. The 18-second clip was posted on TikTok, and in the clip, you can hear Parker tell her students, don't judge people just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old. The Daily Mail was able to obtain the video and posted it to their website. Take a look.
Stop calling them that. You're not allowed to label people like that.
What?
Stop it, Diego. We're not going to call them that. We're going to call them MAPs. No. Minor attracted persons. No. So don't judge people just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old.
Now, it's not clear in what context these statements were made. However, students have said it was all part of a class debate as they prepared to read The Crucible. Some students have even defended their teacher, saying the clip was taken out of context, while others have condemned her for her comments. Posted it on social media. Your reaction tonight. We begin with David with our 13th juror comment of the day. Justly fired. To have this attitude is bad, especially for a so-called educator. Al Wunsch III. Your thoughts about the TikTok?
Okay, so the Crucible veered to pedophilia, which in turn led to MAPs, minor attracted persons. This coming from a twit, teacher without intellectual thoughts. Okay, it's disgusting. But I got to tell you something. The weird thing about it is, like, there's nothing in the Crucible about pedophilia at all. You know, I mean, there is something about names. Okay, they do talk about taking away one's name. Okay, that's the only thing one has. You took my soul, but I still have my name, which is a, you know, one of the lines that's given as they're putting rocks on somebody for being a witch. But I mean, it's just a horrendous, even out of context, it's just a stupid thing to say. Hence, teacher without intellectual thought.
Charlie tonight, I mean, I can only imagine she's being sarcastic and doing it to prove that there are limits and some shouldn't be pushed. Darnell, is there any sort of context where this clip might be okay?
I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe the twit is going through my head. I can't figure it out, Vinny, but I can tell you that the Bible says thou shalt not judge. And so maybe she's saying you shouldn't judge at all. And but it just came across a little harsh when she specifically said, don't judge a person who wants to have sex with a 5-year-old. I think it should stop with thou shalt not judge, but maybe we didn't see the whole video, as they say in the Rodney King case.
Yeah, and apparently after they did see the whole video, they decided to fire her. That was part of the hearing. We haven't seen it all. Judy tonight, she deserved what she got. They're trying to make pedophiles into just something normal. It's not, it's a sickness. Jennifer Brandt, the other thing that I don't even understand about it is, like, that's what you call someone. That's what you call them. They're a pedophile. You are a pedophile. It has a negative connotation because you're a pedophile, right? You're not supposed to be engaging in that behavior. It doesn't matter what you call it. Like, if you start calling it MAPS in another 20 years, and they're going to say, well, don't call someone MAPS because that has a negative connotation. I mean, there's no way to not have a negative connotation about someone who wants to not have sex with a 5-year-old, because you can't have sex with a 5-year-old, who wants to sexually assault a 5-year-old. Remember, consent is part of sex always. No 5-year-old can consent to it. So I don't even know why the teacher was using those terms. Sorry, Jennifer, your turn.
But Vinny here, I think we're all getting carried away because we don't even know what she was trying to do. And maybe she was being sarcastic. She's teaching the class a lesson. And I'm not necessarily defending what she said, but I'm just saying that we're perhaps blowing this out of proportion and taking what she said literally, that is really her opinion about this. And what's even more, not more troubling, but what is troubling to me about all of this is, why are her students filming her to make a TikTok video about what she's teaching in class? And perhaps they should not be doing that, and perhaps they should be disciplined for doing that, because how can teachers teach and try to make a point, and maybe her point was not what we all think it was, you know, if she has to be under the microscope literally, or under a camera with her kids filming her.
Well, there's another lesson. There's another lesson. What you say can and will be used against you. Al Wunsch, Darnell, Crosland, Jennifer Brandt, always a pleasure. We'll see you again really, really soon. When we come back, folks, we've got more work to do. We have a missing child. I have a photo to show you. Don't go away.